Google just released Gemini 3.5 Flash, and they're making some pretty bold claims. Frontier performance at 4 times the speed, often at less than half the cost, which all sounds incredible, but the reality is a lot worse than Google is advertising. And that was only half of what they released. They also released Antigravity 2, which is their new standalone agent app, basically their answer to Codex, as well as the Antigravity CLI, which actually replaces the Gemini CLI, so that's another one for killed by Google. Let's start with the headline stats. This has a 1 million token context window, 64,000 output tokens, and it takes in text, images, video, audio, and PDFs as input. Google has always been pretty good at these multimodal models. As for actual performance, Google's own benchmarks have this model being in line with GPT 5.5 when it comes to coding, being only a few percent behind on swe-bench Pro and Terminal Bench, and in fact, it's actually beating Opus 4.7 on Terminal Bench by around 10%, but Claude Opus does get its own back on swe-bench Pro by beating Gemini by around 10% as well. For agentic workflows, this model is actually winning on both the MCP and Toolathon benchmarks, and overall these benchmarks are not bad results. But all of this is according to Google. If instead we take a look at third-party benchmarks like Artificial Analysis, it's not doing too great. Their coding index has Gemini 3.5 Flash scoring 45, which is actually below models like Kimi K2.6, and it's not even beating Gemini 3.1 Pro, even though on all of their own benchmarks, it was ahead in everything. It's actually only a few points ahead of Gemini 3 Flash as well. The story does get a little bit better when you look at agentic performance. It's made a nice jump over Gemini 3.1 Pro, and yes, technically it is up there competing with the frontier models. Looking at our benchmarks, it appears that 75% of you watching this aren't subscribed, so I'm going to ask you nicely to do so. Please subscribe. The one key highlight of this model though is definitely its speed. They actually got 278 tokens per second out of this model, which massively outperforms Opus 4.7 and GPT 5.5, and even models like Haiku and the open source OpenAI ones. So when it comes to intelligence versus speed, this model definitely is the best. Overall, it's just a mixed bag of results. It's not the best model and it's not the worst, but it is really, really fast. And I wouldn't mind these results if it was actually half the cost of the other models. But this is where things start to fall apart. The price of this model is $1.50 for 1 million input tokens and $9 for 1 million output tokens, which is actually 3 times more than Gemini 3 Flash was, but it is still way cheaper than the likes of Opus 4.7 and GPT 5.5, at least on paper that is. When actually running their benchmarks though, Artificial Analysis found that Gemini 3.5 Flash cost $1,552 to run the intelligence index, which is actually 5.5 times more expensive than Gemini 3 Flash and 75% more expensive than Gemini 3.1 Pro. What's even worse though is this is more expensive than GPT 5.5 when on high reasoning, which massively beats Flash when it comes to coding performance. And in fact, I'll just highlight every model on this chart that is cheaper and outperforms Flash when it comes to coding. It just does not look good at all, and it's certainly not at half the cost like their marketing claimed. Digging a bit deeper into this, it seems like the problem with this model is, while fast, it is token hungry. On agentic evaluations, it averaged 49 turns per task, which is one of the highest of any models they've tested. It just really likes to burn through your input tokens. So overall, I'm just not really sure where this actually leaves us. This model just feels meh. The speed is super cool, so if you value that over everything else, perhaps this is the model to use. The same if you want great multimodal capabilities, but the coding performance is just not enough for me to even consider testing this for a longer period of time than I have in this video. So let's just move on to talk about the other big announcement, which was Antigravity 2 and the new CLI. This is Antigravity 2. Wait, no, sorry, that's T3 code. Maybe this one then? Wait, nope, that's Codex. What about this one? Nope, that's Cursor. This one is actually Antigravity 2, and I think you can see my point. Basically, all of these apps have started to look the same. A funny part of one of our demos is when the developer tries to create a new project, and you can just see the Codex folder right there. So to be honest, I won't spend much time going through this app. It's exactly the same as all of the other ones. We have our conversations on the left, we have our projects, we have scheduled tasks, then in here you can click into any of these files if you want to see the diff view. The only thing to note is that this is not the Antigravity IDE anymore. This is just a completely standalone app. What you're seeing is what you get. Now, I did actually try out a couple of test prompts in here. One of them was to create a full stack personal finance dashboard, and the other one was much simpler, just testing out the UI of how it would build me out a cafe website in a single index.html. This is the result of the very simple cafe prompt, and I've got to say, I do really like the website that it's built here. So it does seem like 3.5 Flash is pretty good at UI design. I'd say this is overall just a very nice site. It does still have a little bit of an AI feel to it. I think it's mostly that card and gradient style that AI seems to like at the moment, but the site is pretty functional and does look how I would expect it to. For context, this is what Opus 4.7 gave me when I gave it the exact same prompt, and I do think Gemini 3.5 Flash wins on this one, but obviously this is just a one-off test. As for the more complicated finance dashboard prompt that's a full stack application, it's done well to actually make the application work, but I definitely don't like the UI design. It's not bad, but it just has that I've been designed by AI look and feel, and also minus points for calling this aura wealth. When you compare that to what Opus 4.7 gave me, it's just a world of difference. Opus 4.7 here looks really nice, and to be honest, I don't have that many notes on how I would change this UI. Opus actually spent 20 minutes on that prompt, whereas Gemini took 5 minutes. So yes, it's definitely quicker, but it also could have used the extra 15 to make it look better. Moving on from that though, we also got the Antigravity CLI, and this one's probably going to anger some people because they're actually shutting down the Gemini CLI. You won't be able to use it after June 18th this year, and the new CLI is basically the same at the moment, except it's been rewritten in Go, and it's also closed source now, which does suck. And I didn't actually install this one, as again, it's just Claude code, but for Gemini. There is nothing new to show you. To summarize all of my thoughts on this then, right now 3.5 Flash is good for agents, but it's expensive and too weak on coding to be the whole package. So I do hope we see a bit more from Gemini 3.5 Pro, which is apparently coming next month. But for now, it just seems like Google is not going to be the leader for coding. And to be honest with you, I don't really think they need to be. It seems that Google's market is more the everyday person, building this into all of your experiences like Gmail, Search, Workspace, Android, and everything else. So maybe developers just aren't going to be their focus. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. While you're there, subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.